1882, Harvard University. William James, the most respected professor in America, locked himself in his study, inhaled nitrous oxide laughing gas, and suddenly screamed, "I know the secret of the universe. God is real, and I just talked to him." He stumbled out of the room laughing and crying at the same time. His students thought he had lost his mind. His wife thought he was having a breakdown. But what he wrote that night became the most controversial chapter in the history of psychology. Tonight, in Part 11, Chapter 3 begins the forbidden drug experiments no one talks about, the night he claimed to see God, and the one sentence that made religious people love him, and atheists respect him, and Harvard almost fire him. Stay until the end, because what he discovered under the gas will blow your mind. After completing his studies at Harvard, William James entered a new phase of life, one that would define his professional career and intellectual contributions. The skills, insights, and habits he had developed during his formative years now served as a foundation for original work in psychology, philosophy, and education. He was determined to explore the mind systematically, connect theory with practical application, and contribute to a deeper understanding of human experience. One of the first challenges William faced was deciding on a clear professional path. Though his interests were broad, he realized that his unique strengths lay in studying the mind and human behavior. Psychology, still an emerging field, offered an opportunity to combine his knowledge of science, philosophy, and observation. He recognized that a systematic study of consciousness, habit, and emotion could provide insights, not only into human thought but also into education, moral development, and personal growth. William began his professional work with an emphasis on teaching and research. Harvard offered opportunities for him to engage with students, conduct experiments, and publish his observations. He used these experiences to refine his methods, focusing on the integration of empirical observation with philosophical reflection. Teaching allowed him to test ideas in practice, while research provided the discipline to gather and interpret evidence. Together, these activities established the methodological rigor that would characterize his later contributions. Early in his career, William explored the psychology of consciousness. He studied how thoughts and feelings flow in a continuous process, influenced by attention, perception, memory, and habit. He observed how individuals respond differently to similar situations, noting the interplay of internal disposition and external circumstances. This dynamic understanding of the mind led to the formulation of his concept of the stream of consciousness, emphasizing that human thought is continuous, adaptive, and context-dependent. Habit remained central to his professional studies. William observed that repeated behaviors shape character, guide decisions, and influence intellectual and moral development. He studied how habits can be cultivated, modified, and integrated into daily life. He recognized that understanding habit was essential not only for psychology, but also for education and ethical guidance. His work emphasized that self-discipline, conscious effort, and reflection are necessary to develop positive habits and achieve personal growth. Emotion was another critical area of study. William observed that feelings are deeply connected to thought, influencing decision-making, perception, and social interaction. He examined the ways in which emotion can enhance reasoning or distort judgment, and he emphasized the importance of integrating emotion with rational thought. This integrative perspective became a hallmark of his work, highlighting the inseparability of feeling and cognition in human experience. Philosophy continued to provide a framework for William's research. He engaged with classical thinkers and contemporary scholars, reflecting on the nature of knowledge, morality, and human consciousness. Philosophy offered tools for interpretation and insight, helping him connect empirical findings with broader questions about life, ethics, and truth. He understood that scientific study alone could not fully explain the human mind. Philosophical reflection was necessary to contextualize observation and analysis. Social observation remained a guiding principle in his professional work. William examined how culture, education, and social environment influence behavior and thought. He observed interactions in classrooms, laboratories, and social settings, noting how individuals respond to expectations, challenges, and societal norms. These observations reinforced his understanding that human behavior is shaped by a complex interplay of internal dispositions and external influences. This perspective informed his later writings on psychology, ethics, and education. William also drew upon his artistic sensitivity in his professional studies. His attention to subtle gestures, expressions, and tones allowed him to detect patterns in behavior and thought that might escape less observant researchers. The skills developed in art patience, careful observation, and attention to nuance enriched his empirical work. He combined artistic perception with scientific methodology, producing insights that were both precise and empathetic, and capturing the richness of human consciousness in ways that had not been done before. By the end of his first professional year, William James had begun to establish himself as a thinker capable of original contributions. His focus on consciousness, habit, emotion, and social observation, integrated with philosophical reflection and artistic insight, provided a unique perspective on human life. He realized that his work could bridge science and philosophy, theory and practice, offering both understanding and guidance for individuals and society. Page 1 of Chapter 3 introduces William James's transition from student to professional thinker. It emphasizes his early focus on psychology and philosophy, his systematic study of consciousness, habit, and emotion, and his commitment to integrating empirical observation with philosophical reflection. These foundations set the stage for his later contributions, including his pioneering research in psychology and his influential philosophical writings. In the early years of his professional career, William James faced the challenge of shaping psychology as a distinct field of study. At the time, psychology was not yet recognized as a separate discipline. Most scholars studied the mind through philosophy or physiology, but William saw the need for a systematic, scientific approach that considered both experience and behavior. He began to develop methods that combined observation, experimentation, and reflection, emphasizing the practical significance of understanding the mind. One of William's first major interests was the study of consciousness. He observed that consciousness is not a collection of isolated thoughts but a continuous flow, influenced by attention, perception, and emotion. He studied how individuals focus on certain ideas, ignore others, and navigate the stream of their mental life. By examining these patterns, he gained insight into how the mind organizes experience, adapts to circumstances, and responds to challenges. This dynamic view of consciousness became a defining feature of his work. Habit remained a central focus of his research. William noticed that repeated actions shape character, guide decision-making, and influence intellectual and moral development. He explored how habits can be formed intentionally, how they affect freedom of choice, and how they can be modified for personal growth. These studies had direct applications in education, ethics, and everyday life. Understanding habit, he realized, was key to helping individuals cultivate positive behavior and achieve greater self-control. Emotion was another area of deep investigation. William observed that emotions are intimately linked to thought and action. They can clarify judgment or distort perception, motivate action or inhibit it. By studying the interaction between reason and emotion, he emphasized the inseparability of feeling and cognition. His observations highlighted the need to consider both emotional and rational factors in understanding human behavior. This integrated approach became a hallmark of his psychological and philosophical thought. William also focused on attention and perception. He examined how individuals selectively attend to parts of their environment, how memory shapes the focus of thought, and how perception influences behavior. These studies allowed him to connect physiological processes with conscious experience, bridging the gap between mind and body. By combining introspection with empirical observation, he developed methods for studying mental life systematically. These early experiments laid the foundation for his later work in experimental psychology. Philosophical reflection continued to guide William's work. He drew upon classical and contemporary thinkers to interpret his findings, connect ideas, and clarify his own understanding. Philosophy helped him ask meaningful questions about knowledge, truth, and morality. By integrating philosophy with observation, he ensured that his research was grounded in both evidence and reason. This balance between empirical study and reflective thought became a defining feature of his method. Social observation was another important element. William studied how cultural norms, education, and social environment shape thought and behavior. He observed interactions in classrooms, laboratories, and social settings, noting how individuals respond to authority, peer influence, and moral expectations. These insights helped him understand the interplay between personal disposition and social context, emphasizing that human behavior is shaped by multiple factors. This perspective would later influence his writings on education, ethics, and social psychology. Artistic sensitivity continued to enrich his professional studies. His ability to notice subtle gestures, expressions, and changes in tone allowed him to detect patterns in thought and behavior that might be missed by others. The patience and attention to detail developed through art became a valuable tool for observation and analysis. By integrating artistic perception with scientific rigor, William could study consciousness and human experience in a nuanced and empathetic way. During this period, William also emphasized the practical value of his work. He believed that insights into habit, emotion, and consciousness could guide education, personal development, and moral life. His pragmatic approach focused on the usefulness of ideas as well as their truth. Knowledge, he concluded, is most meaningful when it can be applied to improve human life. This combination of theory and practice became central to his philosophy and his influence on both psychology and education. By the end of this early professional stage, William James had begun to establish himself as a leading thinker in the emerging field of psychology. His focus on consciousness, habit, emotion, attention, and social observation, integrated with philosophical reflection and artistic insight, provided a unique perspective on human experience. These foundations prepared him to make pioneering contributions that would shape both the study of the mind and the application of knowledge to practical life. Page 2 of Chapter 3 emphasizes William James's early professional work, highlighting his efforts to establish psychology as a distinct field. It describes his studies of consciousness, habit, emotion, attention, and social context, as well as the integration of philosophy and practical application. These years were critical in shaping his methods, insights, and the foundation for his lasting impact on psychology, philosophy, and education. And when William James published his drug experiments, the entire world called him crazy, but one man read it and wrote him a letter that changed everything. Your experience with nitrous oxide is the most important discovery in psychology. Signed, Albert Einstein. In Part 12, you'll finally see the secret love letters that almost ended his marriage, the book that sold millions and is still healing people today, and the one idea that made him the most famous philosopher on Earth. Part 12 tomorrow, 8 p.m. sharp. Subscribe plus bell on. This chapter is about to get wild.